explaining the spiritual realm from the understanding of what the spiritual realm is scientifically, and also how the spiritual realm has such an advantage over this entire dimension. So first we'll go over the first dimension, which is the dimension of the mind. Most would say that it is the dimension of one flat line, but then you have to ask, how does that flat line even get there? And then that contradicts. But what does not contradict is the understanding of the true meaning of the first dimension. The first dimension is the dimension of thought, the dimension of the mind, the dimension of systems, and the dimension of networks. The first dimension, you could not be without any of these dimensions without the first dimension. And the first dimension could not be without the original dimension into which souls began. The second dimension is a dimension of length and width. The third dimension is a dimension of length, width, and height. The fourth dimension is the dimension of length, width, height, and depth. Now keep in mind, from the further names of the measurements, I do not know the names that humanity has created. So I just created names of what I've created, but the definition is scientific. So I can define these measurements, but I do not know the names of the measurements. The fifth dimension is the dimension of length, width, height, depth, and ink, I call this. Now, depth is like the opposing to height, but then understanding depth of an object is similarly to what can change the perception of an object in the ways of. Now, the third dimension only sees in 3 dimensions, so to explain another dimension is a bit difficult, but it is not impossible. So length, width, height, and depth of the fourth dimension is when every single object is perceived in the depth of the object. The fifth dimension is the dimension of length, width, height, depth, and ink. I did not know the name for that, but it is the opposing of length. So depth is like the opposing of height, but yet more measuring details. Now, time velocity is not considered a measurement, just to let you all know. Yes, other dimensions can have time velocity over this dimension. That's just one advantage, but you cannot count time as a measurement. Ink is the opposing of length. Depth is like the opposing of height. And you see it is something like a pattern in nature of what has been created. So the sixth dimension is the dimension of length, width, height, depth, ink, which is the name that is the opposing of length, and depth. So depth is the opposing of width, but just more of measurement to an object, more perception of the object. The seventh dimension is the dimension of length, width, height, depth, ink, depth, and by the way, I created all of these other names because I do not know what name that humanity has created. And Gith, or Geith. Geith is the opposing of height, but not depth, but similar. Well, it is similar to height, not the opposing of depth. It's similar to height. Just like depth is similar to height. Depth is the opposing of height, yet with more detail and measurement. While Geith is similar to height, just with more measurement. The eighth dimension is length, width, height, depth, ink, depth, gith, and migth. I created these names, but I can explain the measurement. So, mikth, mikth, mikthon is the measurement name. And that is the opposing of inch, which is similar to length. Similar to width, but not the same. Okay, and so describing the measurements from the first to the eighth, you cannot count time velocity as a measurement. All of the dimensions increase time velocity regardless. But you cannot count that as the same. Now, as I said, I do not know the name for the measurements, but I can describe those measurements, even though that is not the same as the perception of the third dimension. But yet we can increase our perception by understanding the creatures that live within those dimensions. And yes, there are creatures that live within those dimensions. And there is all kinds of different species of creatures. See, the spiritual realm has something called the Galactic Council, and we'll go over that very soon. And there's many species of that Galactic Council. And it's practically like, the branches of the military with all kinds of different positions. And those positions have specific fields of things, and those specific fields of things have control over those things. And they organize people in metadata by having spiritual realm files for every single individual. We'll go over that here soon. But first, we've got to talk about how all of those dimensions have a major advantage over the third dimension. And so first, by understanding that, we must look at how the second dimension is so vulnerable to the third. So just going to do a stick figure on this behalf. I know my stick figure is just simple, but say that there were two presents in front of this second dimensional creature. Do you think, in the perception of this second dimensional creature, that this creature would actually see the two presents in front of him as presents? The answer is no, because they do not perceive height. This is height. So they would not perceive that. All they would perceive is length and width. This flat line right here. So to the perception of what this creature sees is flat lines. So here is the stick figure creature. All this creature would see is two lines. That is all that creature would see. Even if this creature tried to look at himself, he could not do so. He himself would be a flat line to a creature in the second dimension looking upon that creature. Everything in the second dimension would just be flat lines to their perception, but not to our perception, because we have something called height. And height gives us an advantage over this dimension. So much so that if this stick figure was living, we could tell this creature, there is a present in front of you. Pick that up. Now keep in mind, this second dimensional creature would not know how to pick this object up or how far that it is. The creature would know how far it is because he perceives the flat lines. Okay, but he would not know how to necessarily pick this up to the measurements unless there was a third dimensional creature or dimension above to give the understanding and the perception that this present is here and how to pick it up in the exact spot that it is at. And so that means that a third dimensional creature has a major advantage over this vulnerable second dimensional creature. And so think about how the third dimension is to all of the dimensions above. The spiritual realm has a system of a galactic council. And you consider it can be considered like a galactic federation, or a galactic council, or a galactic organization, or galactic industry. And the reason why that is considered galactic is because those are of higher dimensions and greater technologies than humanity and this dimension. So one human person, okay, say this was a third dimensional person. I know the spiritual realm would definitely see a creature a lot better than this, and even greater dimensions with greater measurements would literally see the components of everything in this dimension. With measurement comes perception, and with perception comes a better reality. But you must have a greater capacity in order to perceive that reality as well. So say that this is a person. So this third dimensional creature could not do this alone. So that means that you are assigned spiritual creatures as soon as you are born from the spiritual realm. You can have many creatures assigned to you to help you throughout life. These creatures can be tied to the organization of the spiritual realm. And the organization of the spiritual realm has something called files. This is something called a web. A web of communications. A web of creatures in the spiritual realm that helps to create you and helps to operate your entire life. That means that everything that you go through is planned before it even happens. And that means that everything of opportunities that you get is contemplated before it even happens. Whether if it's by the members of your body, or whether if it's by the organization. And by the way, at least one of your members is connected to the big galactic organization. I'm going to explain this organization very soon. So when it comes to the understanding of the spiritual organization, so here we have the system. So the system has laws, restrictions, orders, and other kinds of things that give the structure to the spiritual realm. There's all kinds of different creatures of all kinds of different features. Okay, and the spiritual realm has a system. Each person has a profile that tags along to the system. These are the branches of authority fields in the spiritual realm. There is many creatures, and these represent creatures of authority. These higher authority has the greatest access to the bigger system, meaning to make major changes of this dimension. But where are we in this system? We would be as very far. Because from this, each superior field has . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . more branches of superior fields. Similar like the military. When the military has the soldiers, that got the infantry soldiers, then you have the stock management soldiers, or the equipment management soldiers, and then you have the communication soldiers, or the different branches in the military for the soldiers, and then you have the NCOs, then you have the sergeants, master sergeants, and you have the admirals, and you have the positions that go above. And you see how it's not just soldiers and that's it? No. Why do you think that is? And of course include the drill sergeants in that. But why do you think that it's not just simply soldiers and nothing else? Why? Because when there is a system, you have to have only a few of authority fields. And there would be a lot bigger of a number of creatures that are in lower fields, right? Especially when there's bigger numbers, then it's harder to manage, unless you manage it like this. And the spiritual realm is very similar on an organization, but not the same, of course. So as you can see, each superior field has the branches of access and authority. And the reason why so many things are difficult to get done is in this dimension from a third dimensional creature is because the ones that have to do with you are not of authority fields to go directly to the system and make changes. So you see, these are webs of creatures that have to do with you in the spiritual realm. These creatures are not directly in access to the main system, okay? But if there was a request in this dimension to, in the example, make you successful, like paid on YouTube, then what would happen is that would have to go through all of these different creatures in the spiritual realm before something like that could happen. Especially if they have something in the spiritual realm of files against you. And then what do you mean, files against you? Okay, so here's another thing. In the spiritual realm, everybody has their own set of files. Okay? And those files is like your profile, everything about you. So here's the example. So just like when you open up your social media, you have a profile photo, you got everything about you, and they even have, remember there's measurements above this dimension. Okay, so that means they have everything on you, medical files, all of your medical things, everything about you, every single thing. Okay, from everything you've ever gone through, but they usually organize something in metadata to where they have categories. Now, with the organization of the spiritual realm and the many creatures that have access and authority, okay, what you have to realize is that you cannot just simply get something done if you want something changed. Unless, say that I, as a third dimensional creature, had known one of these major authority fields that has direct access to the system. And as a third-dimensional creature, getting things done would be great. Have you ever wondered why some YouTube channels, a person would post the most stupid video and go completely viral? And they made a video that was just stupid. There has been several channels I've really studied. And I'm not studying the physical realm when I look at those channels. I'm studying what is spiritually going on. And I'm looking into those spiritual realm files. And I'm thinking, why did they promote that video when it was about stupid things? You know, whether there was one video, I'm not saying it's completely stupid, but there was a dog that followed this girl around. And that's all the video was. She said, "This dog is following me. Should I take him home?" That's it. That was the only part of the video. That was it. The channel just started. They only had 5 short videos and 1 long form video. That's it. That's all they had. And guess how many views that one video got? Millions upon millions upon millions of views. And I'm not joking when I say this number. That's a little suspicious, isn't it? They just started a channel, only had 5 shorts, 1 long form video, and suddenly went majorly viral. I think that's a little stupid to have millions and millions and millions of views, right? But it was the person in the video who had great spiritual realm files. And someone in superior access was like, make that one viral. It was not because of the dog. She could have made any video about anything and she would have gone viral regardless. Because somebody in the spiritual realm had access that liked her or wanted her to go viral. But say that it was the opposing. Say that there was something of a access of some sort that did not want you to go viral. Then guess what? No matter what you make, no matter what it is, no matter how good the content is, you can make the most amazing videos that nobody on this planet has ever seen. And it would not go viral no matter what you would do, because there's something in superiority that has something against you. But here's the thing. What you have to realize is, I've been studying the spiritual realm for a very long time. I would say I'm definitely more than psychic. And when it comes to networks in the spiritual realm, okay, it looks a lot like this, because it's a web of communications. And communications create this universe. To the highest level of dimension, that is a part of the space-time fabric. And they create this dimension to exist. And to understand them is to understand life. Okay? But yet, first and foremost, worthiness is priority. For if you are not worthy, then you are not deserving. Okay? And you must have worthiness and honorability. When it comes to a creature, say that a creature was born of severe abuse and traumatization. So guess what that would do? That would go into those spiritual realm files. Anything you go through would go into the spiritual realm files. So say that say that this person that went through severe traumatization, right, wanted to have a life. The creature was permanently injured with a permanent indention and break in the skull, right, was denied. Now we'll get to the application part of what happens in the spiritual realm whenever you apply for something. But when it comes to the understanding of this creature, you know, permanent damage, surviving on $11,000 a year on below average income, not even medium income, and applying for hundreds and hundreds of applications, getting completely denied by every single application. It's completely hopeless. Trying to get paid on YouTube, completely hopeless, because there's something going on in this superiority of the spiritual realm. So we're going to talk about applications, what happens with applications in the spiritual realm. How do you really get approved whenever you apply for something? Networks in the spiritual realm can control your approval rates. If those networks are weak to the ones of greater access, then you're going to get denied. But even worse of a case, if there is something in your spiritual realm files that creatures have used against you time and time again, you will never get approved. If it was not something faulted upon you and it is in your spiritual realm files, you need it removed out of the spiritual realm files. If not, they're going to keep trying to use those files against you, and they're not going to let you succeed no matter what you do. In the example, I look at my content, my honorable, worthy content. I look at people who've gotten paid millions, not an over-exaggerated number, millions and millions of dollars on YouTube. I look at the type of content that many of them create, and they do not even do editing like that. They do not even make original content. A lot of them just do product reviews. And here's another thing. So say that you made a YouTube video. So YouTube and this system is pretty close. And so is a lot of the other platforms. Because anything of social media has literally created new branches in the spiritual realm military. Okay? That has its own set of superiority access. Now, of course, this would be many positions until getting to the main system. This would be considered a short amount of superior access of authority, because there's a lot of creatures in the spiritual realm. If you try to put a number, trillions, plural. Okay, there is 8 billion people on this planet, plus more than that. But of human, that's just the human species. Okay, the spiritual realm of multiple layers of dimensions has trillions upon trillions of creatures. Okay, and finding a purpose and a place for all of those creatures has to have an organized system. Okay, that has all kinds of different authority and access. And there's different branches. So every platform and the media gives new opportunities for the new branch in the spiritual realm, which first happened when they were first starting technology. Now there's all kinds of branches in the spiritual realm, and these branches have different things. Now keep in mind, your spiritual realm files plays a big role in everything that happens to you in life. Now, one thing that a lot of those YouTube channels do is they tie under a different system other than their self. Say that in the spiritual realm you had terrible spiritual realm files, and sometimes your spiritual realm files are not terrible because of you, but terrible because of others you've been around or others that you tie to, which you should not tie to anybody other than yourself, because if you do, then it could bring dangers. Like in the example, if you get married, but it's more so if you're related to anybody. But I went through a children's home and academies that went on permanent files. Okay, that I did go through children's home and academies, so they should not count anybody of any biological fields around my files. But the thing is, when it comes to the YouTube platform, say that you did a product review for a major company, and that company knew that you were making a product review. So we're going to put a company detail of this. Say that you made a YouTube video of a company, okay? So instead of you just going to your profile views So here is your profile right here with your files in the spiritual realm. So instead of the video going directly to your files, they can even cut it off of your files entirely and just go straight towards the company. And then suddenly, your spiritual realm files is not having to do with the video. Instead, it's aiming towards the company's files. Now, if it's a big, successful company, then their spiritual realm files are great, successful, and glorious, which is why you would succeed in going viral through that company. We'll give another example. Say that in the example that you was in the military. So say that your spiritual realm files were terrible and not very successful. So you posted a video on YouTube and you would not go viral no matter how much you tried. But then suddenly you put that uniform on and you are counted in the spiritual realm files of the big military files, which, by the way, is very close to the big system. When you go under big things that count in the system of the files, it becomes successful. But if you try to do things by yourself with your files that are not that successful, very low likelihood chance, unless you somehow build your way slowly in small networks of manners. Now this would be very small with millions of things. It would have to be millions of little people in the networks that talk about you, that promote you, that care about you, and that really build you up as a person, and that can increase your spiritual realm files as well, if the superior access approves. Now here is where this draws a line. If this creature of superior access, which there are many, if this creature says, I'm not going to approve of your videos, or I'm not going to approve of you getting successful, no matter how much you build, you could build all of this huge network, okay? You could build a network that can cover this entire thing, okay? But if it is not approved, then they will not let you become successful. Now, if this life was about being successful, then this entire system creates a problem for a person who has files that are not so well. Not due to their own fault, but due to the fault of others. So now you all understand why I have not went viral. And I continue to observe you all's controls. And I will continue to study you all. Perhaps greater than you study me. And you'll see why in the future.